you're gonna look great. But if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits.
That's right, man. Tell 'em.
Welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, your registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits. So we've got another Ask the Trainer episode for you guys. So without further ado, because we both Tony and I have to get out of here quickly, and Justin's had massive technical difficulties, we're going to get right to it without any banter or anything. So Justin, why don't you start this off?
All right. So our first question comes from Josiah. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And Josiah writes, this isn't really a question, but I would love it if you could base a future episode around personal training. I'm going to take a test for my license in a couple weeks, and I wanted to hear some advice from a professional about what exactly personal trainers need to know and to do on a daily basis. Really just a broad overview of the career choice, and I'm sure other listeners are in a similar situation as me. I love the podcast. Thanks.
Hey, Josiah, so we actually did record an episode. So I'm going to give you two episodes to go back in our archives and look at. Both were from 2016. So one is tips for personal trainers and freelancers, I believe in general is the rest of that. So that was from September 26th, 2016. So we go through a lot of tips in that episode about kind of what to expect starting as a trainer. The other episode, which just might be kind of fun, was our bonus personal trainer secrets, odd jobs. So you'll kind of find out about some of the odd, weird, strange jobs that you may encounter based on being a trainer. But since you're listening and you wrote the question, I'll just give you a couple of tips. One really important thing is patience. When you're starting off as a trainer, a lot of it is selling yourself, and especially when you're getting started, you've got to consider that you have to build a client base, you have to build rapport with people. So don't expect too much too soon. Now, it might happen, and some people have that ability, but realistically, it's going to take you time to build your business and to get your clients and get the referrals and kind of get known. The second thing I would say is definitely start working at a gym. Now, there will be opportunities maybe to do in-home training, and for a lot of people, it's easier or it seems more advantageous to work on your own because you get all the money. But being in a gym helps because you have access to a lot of people. You get to meet the clientele, you get to meet the membership, you get to work with a variety of trainers, and you can really steal ideas and take ideas and learn from people. So I definitely recommend working at a gym. Definitely recommend kind of, again, patience. And that's hard to say if you have bills to pay, but you really, to do it really in earnest and give it a real shot, it's going to take some time. So, if you have a part-time job, I'd say maybe, another job, you may not want to quit the job fully until you really have enough business that you can. But it's kind of a delicate balance. So depending on where you are in life, you might need to, make certain sacrifices, or you may not be able to. But, just, again, patience when you're starting. Be open to learning from people. There are tons of ideas. Always listen, talk to new people, talk to people about different ideas, question, ask why, subscribe to the Journal of Strength and Conditioning. Really try to immerse yourself in the world because there's so much out there that the more you can get from it, the more you can share. And again, listen to that other episode. We go a little bit deeper into kind of some of the things to expect as a trainer.
All right, Josiah, I hope that answers the question, and I hope you go back and listen to those archived episodes. I believe they're really informative. So our next question comes from Ryan, and Ryan asks, first off, I'll say the podcast is amazing. Thanks, Ryan. You didn't write this, did you, Ryan? No. Okay, it's a different Ryan. I do have a question. Okay. I've been studying for the NASM certification for a few months now, and I have honestly learned more from your podcast than any book or study courses. That's great to know. My question is mainly about diet. I know you guys have touched on these things in other podcasts, but I was wondering what an ideal diet looks like from first meal to last meal on the day of a cutting plan and then on a clean bulking plan. Not for any type of competition or anything drastic. I just hear so much about the cutting and bulking season, but I'm sort of unclear as to what a diet should really look like. Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, I'll take this one. cutting and bulking is pretty much just saying when you're cutting, you're at a caloric deficit trying to achieve fat loss. And bulking is you're at a caloric surplus trying to fuel your muscles and just build up as much kind of size before you're ready to kind of cut. So the major difference is the carbohydrate content, specifically breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. To be honest, I can't be like so specific, but I mean, if you go to something like bodybuilding.com, like they have examples and plenty there. But for an individual level, I do believe everyone's different. So I don't believe in just general recommendations, but I mean, simple things that might be different on like a cutting plan versus a bulking plan is it also might have a little bit less fat. So a cutting plan, you'll have a lot more egg whites than whole eggs because you want the protein without, you know, the fat. The carbohydrates would definitely be, you know, when you're bulking, it might be at like 50% of your macronutrient distribution, whereas if you're cutting, it's probably, or even up towards like of 60%, but if you're cutting, it's going to be at like probably 40, sometimes even 30. It depends on really how long you're cutting for. So it's a lot. Unfortunately, it's a much more complicated answer, but the basics of it, I could say in simplified forms, is cutting, you're trying to create fat loss, so there needs to be a caloric deficit, and it's going to be lower in carbohydrates. Bulking, there's going to be a caloric surplus. It's going to be higher in carbohydrates, and the protein's usually relatively the same. It might vary slightly, and then the fat varies slightly as well.
So I'll ask a follow-up. You often hear that people like to have many meals instead of the typical 3 meals, that they'll go for 5, 6 meals. Often,
good point.
I've heard that, especially during cutting, believe it or not, they prefer to have these small meals throughout the day. Does that impact your cutting diet at all, or is it really
just more? Yeah, it's just strategic of the person. Like, think about it, if you have less food to eat all day, it might be better to keep it up smaller so that way you feel like you're eating all day. Because if you only had 3 meals and you're eating a certain amount of calories that isn't a lot, you're going to be hungry. Like, it's cutting, so there's a lot of hunger there. That's probably, so people might, I might recommend to someone kind of spread it throughout so you don't feel starving. And then as for bulking, sometimes you have to be in such a caloric surplus that it feels like you're eating constantly. So that could some people like to do that by like having very, very large meals, or they like to do it because it's easier on their digestive tract to have they're not really small, they're just like more multiple meals in a day. But either way, they're both controlled. So like someone would have to, that's what dietitians are for. They take a look at your caloric needs, based off your height, your weight, your activity level, your goals, tell you how much carbs to have, how much protein to have, how much fat to have, et cetera, et cetera. But it's definitely individualized for the person.
And the idea that if you eat more meals throughout the day, that's going to speed up your metabolism, that's a myth, right? Like that doesn't hold much weight, right?
It doesn't hold much weight, but I believe in a lot of other benefits to it. I believe that when we have small, frequent meals throughout the day, you're less likely to over or under eat. I do believe that it helps with your insulin levels, and which, believe it or not, I've been doing some research how that actually can help someone's skin. Like, there's so many other factors. I just find that it just tends to be a better style, I guess, plan for eating, but it's not necessarily calories in, calories out is pretty much.
And the one thing I did read about that, again, it's a small study, I got to find it, but the only negative is might be that we tend to underestimate the amount of calories we're taking in, so I think you want to be very
it has to be controlled. So if you're tracking your intake and you're working with the dietitian, then it doesn't really matter when you eat the food as long as you have a certain amount designated of what you're eating. But think about it, if you're trying to lose weight and you're eating too much and we say cut out snacks, of course you're going to lose weight, right?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing to try is the small meals. Of course, that requires a lot of preparation as well. So if you're really into it, definitely give it a shot. And Ryan, I hope that gave a nice quality answer to your question. All right, so for our next question, we have Christine. And Christine writes, "Hi, GymWits. Hope you guys are doing well. I really enjoy listening to your podcast. I'm so grateful to have found it." Well, thank you very much, Christine. My Ask the Trainer question is about weight management. I am 28 years old, 5'2" female that weighs 160 pounds. When I started working a full-time office job about 5 years ago, I weighed around 140 pounds. I've always had a more muscular build rather than a lean one, and I've been lifting weights and working out constantly for the past 10 years. I'm finding it nearly impossible to get my weight down with being a full-time working mom, though. I work out 3 times a week during my lunch break for about 30 minutes doing HIIT workout, high intensity interval training workout videos, and usually I hike or take a long walk on the weekends. I used to weight lift about twice a week, but have stopped because I feel too muscular right now and I want to get the fat off. I do get pizza or Chipotle about once a week, and I like red wine on the weekends. Other than that, I usually eat a protein bar or shake for breakfast, a plain rice cake and almond butter for my pre-workout snack, a protein and veggie for lunch. My afternoon snacks vary, and then veggies, protein, and a carb for dinner. Am I eating too much or working out too little to at least maintain a normal weight? At this rate, I will be close to 300 pounds by the time I retire. What am I doing wrong? Seriously, any advice would be helpful. Thanks so much, Christine.
Thank you, Christine, for writing in. First of all, you will not be 300 pounds because you are exercising regularly and you do eat a relatively healthy diet. Chances are, and I'm going to tell you that what you can do for me is I want you to track your intake. You get an app like MyFitnessPal. A lot of times it's lack of consistency and sometimes portion control. And maybe sometimes combinations of foods. There's so many factors. Maybe you're not sleeping enough. Like maybe it has nothing to do with the food and exercise. You know, being a full-time working mom, I know a lot of times moms who at work full-time sacrifice on their sleep. I don't know how old your child is, but sometimes you have no choice. But if you can get more sleep, that might help. I would probably say track your intake, send me an email, tipswithtony@gmail.com. I'll take a look at what you're eating. You can take screenshots of MyFitnessPal. You can message me on Instagram, whatever it is. Let's take a look and really deep dive, because sometimes we think we're doing everything right, and when we actually start to track, we realize certain habits and behaviors that are kind of getting in the way. The other thing I might tell you to do is just if you haven't gotten just like your annual blood work done, just take a look. Make sure, your thyroid's good. I think, did you say you have a desk job?
Yeah.
An office job. One thing you can do that would really help is if you get like a Fitbit monitor, just try to really get to that 10,000 steps every day, because unfortunately with sedentary jobs, and I struggle with this as a counseling dietitian, I'm sitting constantly all day long. And even when I do my workouts, it's basically just kind of compensating for the fact that I sat all day. It's not really helping me with my weight loss. There's totally different things. They're two different things. So if you could just like increase your frequency of movement more, that might help. Ryan, anything about that aspect for weight loss? Is she doing strength training? Maybe she needs to do more strength training.
So I definitely say don't stop the strength training. I think the HIIT training is great, and I love that you're doing that. You want to get at least one day, maybe 2 of the weight training if you can fit it in.
Because if the diet's controlled, she's afraid of getting bulky. That's what she's saying. But if the diet's controlled and she does strength training, she'll actually lose weight.
Yeah. So, the more muscle will, have that effect of being, kind of has more fat burning properties and more muscular. So now if you have an issue where you feel like you're getting too muscular, there are 2 potential things, and I've seen, or a few. I won't do the math right now, but we'll see how many I come up with. But when somebody feels like they're getting too big, either it could be an area that is just a thicker area on them. Like I know a few people who have like bigger legs, and so when they lift weights, the added kind of little bit of muscle makes the legs bigger, and they get frustrated or freaked out by it, and then it kind of turns them off of any weightlifting. So one thing to consider is if there's a specific area that's growing, then maybe just lay off that area, but don't stop weightlifting altogether. So like if you don't like the size of your shoulders, then maybe don't focus on exercises that focus on the shoulders, but you still don't want to stop weightlifting. There's so many other muscles that you can work that I would stay away from detriment unless like you're just everywhere, you're getting way too muscular. But otherwise, I think there are too many positive benefits to at least getting 1 day of resistance training in. So I definitely keep that in, and keep up the HIIT training. And yeah, like Tony mentioned, anything you can do to kind of increase your activity is always great for your health, especially if you have a kind of sedentary work life. So like I said, try to increase your weightlifting, and hopefully you and Tony can connect and figure this out.
Nice. So our next question comes from Stefan, and Stefan writes, "Hey guys, I know I'm far behind in your podcast. I just started listening yesterday, but I listened to the podcast that talked about whether working out at the gym is fun or not. And you guys mentioned the difficulty of it being hard to go to the gym if you don't enjoy it, but you want results, so you go. And there are definitely a lot of people that will fall into that category. They don't love going, but they go because they know the importance of it. Well, I wanted to mention the fact that when people go to the gym for the first few times, it always sucks, especially when you're pushing yourself hard. But after 2 or 3 weeks of it, your body develops a habit of working out, and it becomes a necessity. You guys mentioned that sometimes you go a week or more without working out and you feel like crap. But is that why? Lastly, I noticed that Ryan mentioned how to get toned, but he didn't specify how to bulk up. All right, Ryan, why don't you take this one?
Oh, really? Oh, thank you. All right. So I guess there are a few comments there. Everyone's different. So I think that, most people's default is not, I don't want to say most people, but a lot of people, their default is not wanting to exercise. No, I will say most people. Most people's default is they don't want to exercise. And especially in the society we live, where we're stressed and we're active and working, family and everything, it makes it even harder to get exercise in. So it's especially tough getting yourself there. For many people, they do, once they see the results, it does get them motivated. And once you build a habit, it becomes a regular part of your everyday life. So I think that he's certainly right on that. The only issue sometimes is when things come into play that cause you to fall off the wagon, it is often hard to get back on the wagon because it's not kind of just an aspect of your life that you do. If you get really sick and stop going to work for a week, you're going to go right back to work because you have to go to work. It's part of your life. So I think that's the thing with exercise, is that there's this habit forming component that if you don't get that, it's very difficult to overcome certain obstacles as they come in. And then also regarding the tone, yeah, absolutely. We've talked about kind of quote toning, and we will talk about bulking up. That's my next big kind of, the big, we do a lot of research and, bring up a lot of the studies is really talking about getting size and the science behind it and what you have to do. I know, obviously if you're just getting into the podcast, we've got, hundreds of episodes at this point. So at different points over the years, we have talked about gaining mass, but we are working on an episode that should go up in the next, I'd say 3-4 weeks, because I'm going to be away for a while, and we're kind of loading up on podcasts so that you guys don't miss our episodes. But when one of the bigger episodes I'm working on is, again, bulking up and gaining size, and really kind of, again, talking about what goes into that, and, different body types and all that kind of stuff. So, Stephen, thank you for being a listener, and hope you enjoy it. And hopefully next few weeks you will get to find out how to bulk up.
All right. So our next question comes from Belle. And Belle writes, "Greeting from Bangkok. I am a big fan of you guys, especially Tony." Yeah, Tony, it's only a matter of time, if not already, that Tony becomes way the most popular member of the GymWits. She's my favorite member. Aww. So
sorry, Ryan.
Clearly. And I've been listening to your podcast for almost a year, and to be honest, I've learned so much from you guys, and it helps confirm the healthy lifestyle that I have chosen. I have been following several female fitness models on YouTube lately and found one common behavior of doing weekly cheat days with loads of donuts, pizza, burgers, chocolate, and others, confectionery and fast food that you can think of. So I think Belle's saying that she's noticed that weekly behavior is that they all do this one weekly cheat day, and where they eat pretty much anything they want. Some claim that having a cheat day have helped them create a better relationship with food, as they have been very strict with what they've eaten throughout the rest of the week. Surprisingly, those people are in extremely good shape. Most of them do heavy lifting, exercise regularly, as well as exercising on their cheat day. Leading to my question: what actually is the benefit of the cheat day? Is it better to have a cheat day, or is it better to indulge yourself on some days, one serving of ice cream every 3 to 4 days versus 7,000 calories in one day? Is there any correlation between eating a lot with lean bulking or lifting performance, or can you eat as much as you want as long as you lift really heavy? Or are these people just happy to, or just happen to be naturally lean regardless of what they eat? I hope my questions are making sense. I always believe that eating too much of anything, either good food or bad food, are not good for our body, and seeing these people eating way too much food and staying lean makes me question what I believe. Thank you for your timing, and look forward to hearing back from you. Well, thank you, Belle, from writing. And this is actually a very interesting question, and there's quite a lot that's involved. So you want to start on your opinion on the cheat meal, Tony?
Absolutely. So first of all, fitness modeling that sounds like it's their job, and then they're getting paid for it. So for your day-to-day life, sometimes people have to go to extremes, to get certain results. Although they're claiming that it's helping them develop a healthier relationship with food, I do not have that experience working with people with eating disorders, working with people that have a distortion of the way they develop their relationship with food. Doing this for over 5 years now, I just believe that it gives food the power. It's basically let me eat very, very little Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday or whatever it is, and really restrict myself, so that way I can now look at food as, oh my gosh, like donuts, pizza, burgers, although for the short term, this might be great for the fitness model or the bodybuilder or whatever have you, because psychologically, it's a psychological break that they're really looking for. Physiologically, there is science behind kind of a cheat day or a refeeding, but it still should be controlled. So for a psychological factor, some people might do better off having kind of like that cheat day or that cheat meal or whatever. For a physiological factor, basically the purpose of a cheat meal or a cheat day or a refeed day, they're all slightly different, but the reason behind them, what science and studies show, is that basically we have to replace, if you're depleting yourself of carbohydrates to get lean, to get cut, your glycogen stores in your muscle are depleted, and so we need to put that back in. So that's where the whole concept of that cheat meal kind of comes in. Listen, if you're doing a competition, it's totally different. If you're just your everyday average person that's trying to just be healthy and get fit and just, have that healthy relationship with food, then it might be, I would recommend, maybe a little bit of something every day, whether it be a piece of chocolate would be a better option, or maybe utilizing the weekends as not a free-for-all, but like allowing yourself to maybe have, some pizza or an extra glass of wine or something like that. It has to fit the person's lifestyle, but it should always be controlled, because that idea of, listen, if this is their job, an everyday person, that might cycle into another day of overeating. It also doesn't feel good to overeat like that. You don't feel good, and a lot of those foods, like exactly what you said, Belle, which is true, like whether they're good or bad foods or healthy or non-healthy foods or whatever it is, anything in excess or not enough of, for that matter, the extremes tend to affect our bodies in negative ways. And I want to just say that I did talk to you guys about getting someone on to talk about like reverse dieting and all that, and I think he'll do an excellent job explaining this in greater details, because this could honestly be an entire episode in itself. So I just want to make sure I answered all the questions.
So
it looks like you want to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah. Coming from me, who's not a fitness professional, what has always worked best for me is, I've never done the cheat meal or the cheat day thing. What's always worked best for me is when I indulge on occasion, and I don't restrict myself. I just don't do it very often. So I might say, all right, it's been 6 days since I've had any sort of dessert type thing. So today I'm going to have a small piece of dessert, right? I'll have a little bit of ice cream, right? Then I just don't think about it because I know when I want to eat it, I eat it. Now, this might not work for everyone because it might spiral, but for me, it's worked. Say, all right, when was the last time I had, a dessert? Oh, 9 days ago. All right, so I'm going to have a little dessert today, right? I haven't had pizza in a long time. Right now, I know that might not work for everyone because they might say, oh, well, I had it yesterday. Oh, now I could have it every 2 days. Now I have it every day, right? So I know it could certainly spiral, and everyone's a little different. As a non-fitness professional, that's what's worked for me is just really a practice in moderation and to, enjoy it on occasion. Now, one thing about other people that are lean, there are people like that they could just eat anything and genetically they're just gifted, and no matter what they eat, they look great and they weigh nothing. There are some people that are like that, especially when you're younger, and if you're working out a ton, there are some people that are like that. I think you can't get too wrapped up in those people. There are some freaks out there that are just
too, though. But this is their job, so
and it's their job too.
That's the thing. They probably are training for 3 to 4 hours every day. They are training at a point where they can easily consume 7,000 calories, and it doesn't make a dent in the amount of calories that they're burning and the muscle that they're building. So it really is different. If you're just for an everyday average person, like, unfortunately what happens is we see that this is what bodybuilders are doing and this is what models are doing, and but are you doing that? It doesn't make sense to go to that kind of extreme if what's the end goal for long-term longevity. Like, also you have to remember these people are screwing up their metabolism so badly, and once again we'll do another episode about that, but it's called metabolic adaptations, and every time they go low and go back high, it screws up their metabolism every single time. So yes, they look great now, but in the future, who knows? Honestly, unless they can keep up with this, chances are that weight's not always going to look pretty.
Yeah, and to piggyback off what you guys said, I think as a general rule of thumb, when you're looking for exercise and diet advice, don't look to athletes, actors, celebrities, and models unless you are in a very similar position to them. So if you're an actor and you want to look like Hugh Jackman in Wolverine, then sure, look at his program. But in general, and I granted, now a lot of people are going to be like, well, I'm not an actor, but I want to look like that. But in general, like, you don't want to look at what they're doing, because there are two components. One, as you guys mentioned, is the what they're doing. That's their job. They spend hours and hours a day, whether it's meal planning, exercising, prepping, resting, massage, all that extra stuff. They're doing a lot of things to look like that. So that's their job. So unless you have the amount of time that they have, it's going to be hard. The other part is there's just a genetic component. So for a lot of the Instagram models or fitness models, like, part of it's the hard work, and I don't want to discount that, because people, they work very hard, but the other part is that they genetically are gifted. And it's same thing with any kind of an athlete. Like, you're going to have Michael Jordan, who has the genetic gifts and the work ethic, and then you're going to have Joe Blow, who didn't have the genetic gifts, but he had the same work ethic. But Joe Blow is not going to make it because he's not genetically kind of predisposed to it. And it's the same thing with modeling. I hate to say it, but if there's a certain look that's going to work, you're going to have some people that are just genetically predisposed to it. And so you can't look at their diet and their exercise program as, oh, that's what's going to get me, that's what's going to work for me, unless your goal is to be that person. And if your goal is to be that person, you have to be realistic with yourself about the amount of work and effort and time that's going to, really go into it. And then, with the kind of binge eating, I definitely, agree with what you guys said. I think that if you have an unhealthy relationship with food, that's something that you really need to think twice about.
It's almost like excusing binge eating, which I don't agree with.
There are some people, I definitely know quite a few people who have success with that type of thing, where it's like a cheat meal per day. So now, on the flip side, the people I know that have had success, it's not what Justin said, it's structured, but they also don't have an unhealthy relationship with food. So, like, I know people, myself included, where I've had success doing that, where it kind of staves off those intense cravings, but I also don't have major issues with food. I can eat unhealthy, but I don't have problems. And I know other people in a similar position who kind of like okay, you know what, Monday is my kind of reward and I'm happy with it. And then I go on about my day, but they're not binging. It's just like, you know what, Monday I'm going to have that Sunday, and you kind of look forward to it. But again, it's so person specific that I think you really do have to look at yourself and what works for you. And if you do have any issues with food, I would definitely not recommend the binging, because it generally is just going to snowball. And I know, personally have dealt with way too many people who kind of have that issue of they're great, and then they're like, I'll just have the cheat day. And then that cheat day, it never lasts more than a couple weeks before it snowballs.
Wouldn't it make sense to have a Sunday on Sunday rather than on Monday?
No.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of, I have to go celebrate my sister's birthday. So,
Yes. Take us out, Ryan.
We're gonna wrap up. I had a question for Justin, because he's claims to be a Yankees fan, but now he says he's not a Yankees fan anymore. So that was a quick turnover. But then I realized that we may not have even released the episode where Justin said he's a Mets fan. So you might hear me.
I think that was released a long time
Oh, it was
ago.
okay. If you heard, okay,
Yeah.
great, good. Well, next time I'm gonna ask you why you're not a Met. Why you just can't give up the Mets. As much as you try to shake them, you just can't. But we'll get to that later. Anyway, all of our stuff at TheGymWits.com. You can find our social media. We got some good stuff coming up. As I said, I'm traveling, and hopefully I'll be able to explain why I'm traveling, because it is a really, really cool, awesome opportunity that I've got. So I will hopefully be able to share that soon. But as usual, I don't know why I say that. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, aka Tipsy Tony, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are the GymWits.